Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're looking at a truly fascinating collision of worlds. We are exploring the intersection of hyper-advanced military technology, think artificial intelligence, behavioral analytics, algorithmic warfare, and the 2,000-year-old philosophy of ancient Stoicism. I know, it sounds a bit like science fiction, but this is the cutting-edge reality of multi-domain operations today.
So let's just dive right into this. You might be wondering, what on earth does an ancient Roman emperor like Marcus Aurelius have to do with modern AI warfare? Well, it's the ultimate David versus Goliath battle. On one side, we have the human mind, heavily constrained by its own biology. And on the other side, we have relentless, algorithmic warfare designed specifically to exploit those very biological limits. So how do we defend ourselves? The answer, surprisingly, lies deep in the past.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The biological bottleneck. 2. Weaponizing information overload. 3. Digital phenotyping and AI. 4. The AI-enabled officer. And 5. The Stoic shield.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the biological bottleneck and the physiological limits of the human mind.
To truly grasp modern tech warfare, or honestly, just the modern digital world we all live in, we first have to understand the fundamental hardware limitations of the human brain. We aren't machines, right? Our cognitive architecture evolved for pattern recognition in natural environments, definitely not for parsing dense, multi-screen data feeds. And that brings us to a magic number, 7. Cognitive psychologist George Miller identified a fundamental constraint of human working memory. We can only maintain 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information at the exact same time. Whether you're just a civilian looking at your smartphone or a military operator tracking threats across land, sea, air, space, and cyber domains, you are bound by this exact same biological bottleneck.
Think of it like a giant puzzle. Here's how that bottleneck plays out across your brain's specific memory subsystems. Your phonological loop gets totally saturated by verbal information, like overlapping radio communications or reading a ton of text. Your visuospatial sketchpad gets overwhelmed by competing visual stimuli, like multiple map displays or a dozen browser tabs. And your central executive, the part that actually coordinates your attention, well, it just maxes out. When these systems are overwhelmed, our brains panic. We're forced to resort to mental shortcuts that introduce some seriously dangerous biases and blind spots. Now consider the Yerkes-Dodson bell curve. What's really interesting here is that a little bit of stress or emotional arousal is actually a good thing. It pushes you right up to that peak zone of optimal performance where you're super alert and focused. But as the sheer volume of information exceeds your capacity, you slide right down the other side of that cliff into excess anxiety. That creates counterproductive stress and severely degraded decision-making. And it's not just about that immediate stress either. It's about sheer endurance. You've got to think of your brain as a battery. It has highly limited metabolic resources available. Specifically, your brain literally runs on a finite supply of oxygenated glucose. So every single time you make a decision, resist an impulse, or try to ignore a distraction, you are physically burning through that glucose. This means your decision-making ability literally degrades the longer you go. If you're operating in a high-stress, information-dense environment, your mind experiences profound metabolic exhaustion. Which brings us to Section 2, Weaponizing Information Overload, or the Invisible War. So we've got these hardwired biological limits. What happens when modern adversaries figure out they can actively weaponize your biological bottleneck against you? Welcome to the Invisible War. To explain this, let's look at military strategist John Boyd's famous OODA loop. It stands for observation, orientation, decision, and action. This represents the cyclical, continuous process of how humans interact with their environment. In modern information warfare, an attacker doesn't necessarily need to drop a bomb and destroy your physical equipment. No way! They just need to flood your observation and orientation phases with so much corrupted or useless data that you can never accurately process what's happening. And if you can't orient, you can never make a decision or take action. When an adversary successfully floods your OODA loop like that, it induces what researchers call information fatigue syndrome. And wow, this isn't just feeling a bit tired after a long day. It's a hyper-aroused psychological condition that results in a total paralysis of your analytical capacity. The target is hit with an indigestible amount of information, leading directly to anxiety, self-doubt, and ultimately, really foolish decisions. It is, quite literally, a psychological kill shot.
All right, Section 3, Digital Phenotyping and AI. Let's peek behind the curtain.
As if that wasn't enough, the technology gets even more terrifyingly precise. We are entering the realm of operational cyberpsychology, where AI doesn't just try to overwhelm you, it surgically exploits your specific mental state. The key technology here is called digital phenotyping. Basically, this is the real-time assessment of your cognitive state through data extracted right from your smart devices. AI algorithms aren't just tracking what websites you visit anymore. They are mathematically profiling your psychological vulnerabilities in real time. They're creating a living, breathing map of your mind based entirely on your digital footprint.
To put that into perspective, it's incredibly granular. I mean, how does an AI actually know you're stressed? Well, it watches your smartphone interactions. It analyzes how frantically you're switching back and forth between applications. It measures micro-changes in your typing speed, your error rates, and your response latencies. All of these seemingly mundane, everyday actions broadcast your hidden stress, your cognitive load, and your metabolic exhaustion directly to behavioral analytics engines.
So here is the absolute crucial point. Humans basically have dual cognitive systems. We have a slow, analytical system and a fast, emotional, heuristic-based system. AI algorithms know that when your cognitive load is high, when you are metabolically exhausted, your analytical processing completely shuts down. And that is exactly when dynamic adaptation models strike. They wait for that exact moment of weakness to deliver emotionally resonant, manipulative messaging that bypasses your human discipline entirely.
Moving on to Section 4, the AI-enabled officer and the modern counter-strategy.
Okay, I know this all sounds a bit terrifying, right? But the answer isn't to just throw away all our tech and hide in a cave. So how do we actually survive and thrive in this environment? We have to evolve the human-machine relationship into what the military calls the AI-enabled officer. Major General Reeves really hit the nail on the head here. He says, an AI-enabled officer understands how to use AI to create the efficiencies to allow you to go do those things that only humans can do. The goal here isn't to let the machine make the moral choices. The goal is to use AI as a cognitive scaffold to filter out the noise. It manages that information overload so your human mind is preserved for leadership, empathy, and complex moral judgments.
But to actually survive in an environment where AI accelerates literally everything, humans need something called identity alignment. Look, automation is brittle. It's going to fail or get jammed up in combat for sure. When the screens go dark, humans need an internalized purpose and serious moral clarity to act adaptively. Identity alignment provides the cognitive availability and mental bandwidth required to make those split-second ethical decisions when the algorithms inevitably drop the ball.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, the Stoic Shield, Ancient Defense for a Digital Age. To build this identity alignment and actually protect the modern networked mind from digital phenotyping and information fatigue, military researchers are turning back to a philosophy forged on the battlefields of antiquity, ancient Stoicism. But before we go any further, we have to clarify a massive modern misconception. Pop culture often promotes this idea of pseudo-Stoicism, the toxic idea that you should just suppress and ignore all your emotions. Actually, scratch that. Doing that leads directly to psychological trauma. True, ancient Stoicism is the exact opposite. It's all about functional grounding. It's about deeply understanding your values, processing your impressions, and achieving human flourishing, even in the absolute thick of extreme adversity. Let's break down the actual tools of this ancient defense mechanism. First up is the dichotomy of control. This is about ruthlessly separating what is in your power from what isn't, which perfectly counteracts the paralyzing anxiety of all that information overload we talked about. Second is amori fati, loving your fate. That means reframing every digital or physical hardship as an opportunity to practice excellence. And third, voluntary exposure to hardship, or stoic toughening training. This is all about building your resilience during peacetime so you are truly ready when the storm hits. The great military philosopher Karl von Clausewitz, who was heavily influenced by the Neo-Stoic tradition, captured this beautifully. He wrote that a strong mind maintains its serenity under the most powerful excitement, acting with perfect freedom like a compass needle in a storm-tossed ship. I mean, what a great image. This is exactly what Stoicism provides, a mental compass that stays true, regulating your mind despite the chaotic, invisible war of algorithms raging all around you. Which brings us to the core message of today's explainer. You can have the most advanced AI, the most brilliant digital phenotyping, and the absolute fastest networks on the planet. But achieving hyperproductivity under the intense pressure of high-tech psychological warfare relies entirely on human moral clarity. The ultimate technology is and always will be a well-regulated human mind.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Right now, as we speak, algorithms are analyzing your screen time, your typing speed, the whole shebang. As these systems increasingly map your mind, what philosophy is guarding your digital phenotype? Are you just letting the algorithms dictate your OODA loop, or are you actively building your own stoic shield? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.